Hi everyone, this is Sean with the MassSupport Network, here with your COVID-19 update, the public health report for the state of Massachusetts for Friday, December 11th, 2020. So everything's on the rise this week, unfortunately. Estimated cases are currently circulating in the state or under isolation, jumped up about 14,000 cases in the last week. We looked before about people who were under quarantine for cases, and if you caught last week's update, you may recall I mentioned that they did not jump up significantly between the Thanksgiving holiday week and the week after. And this week they did make up some of the difference, jumping up another 2,000 plus people under quarantine right now. In terms of cases under isolation, again, there was a similar case with the backlogs from Thanksgiving, with only 4,000 change from the 2 weeks before. This week, of course, it jumped up quite a bit there as well, jumping to 61,000 people currently in isolation for COVID-19 in the state of Massachusetts. In terms of where demographically who the disease is currently infecting, you can see on the left last week's population numbers, and on the right the demographics of who is currently infected with the virus. And here is the chart for the pandemic as a whole. There are some slight increases in the younger demographics, with the youngest at the bottom and the oldest at the top here. And as you can see here, the demographics under 30 have all, or sorry, excuse me, under 40 have all increased slightly in the last week. And that is where most of the spread is coming from right now. The average age did drop down 1 year from 40 to 39 and the new infections in the last week. However, the average age of new hospitalizations and new deaths both increased by 1 year in the last 2 weeks. Hospitalizations are increasing, with almost 300 additional people in hospitals right now over last week. With about 40 additional people in ICUs and another 31 people on ventilators across the state. Testing turnaround time has, however, gotten a little shorter. The report from last week, as I thought, had the backlogs from Thanksgiving in there, and as we're tightening that up, we've reduced that by a couple hours there, about 2.5 hours shorter in the time from getting a test to Department of Public Health getting the report is now exactly 2 days. Now looking at the next phase of that with contact tracing, our contact tracers are still falling behind right now, while we try to catch up with the increased cases. As you can see, about 64% right now of outreach is completed within 1 day, which is still a little bit down from the week before and is significantly down from before Thanksgiving. It's also worth noting that our total amount of cases outreached has still continued to drop from the week before to this week. But these are all, of course, as percentages. Often this means when the numbers are pretty close, they're actually contacting more people, but just the significant rise means that it's a slower percentage. So looking across the state, at where case counts are going up, this is the average daily incidence rate, which is the number of new cases per day per 100,000 people over the last 2 weeks. And last week, the incidence rate for the state was in the 30s, and now we're at 50 new cases per day per 100,000 people in the state. And there have been a lot of massive jumps in this period. However, this 2-week period does include the time after Thanksgiving, so this may not be completely indicative yet, but there's huge jumps in Suffolk, Essex, Franklin, Bristol, Dukes, Nantucket, just really some places nearly doubling. So we'll check in again next week on this and see if these numbers are holding steady or if they slightly drop off to reflect the fact that there was some backlog numbers in there. In terms of percent positivity, we also had a jump there, going from 3.73% positive across the state to 5.25% of COVID-19 tests coming back positive in the last 2 weeks. Now, these are slightly lagging numbers from when they get reported there. You can see that this chart only goes up to the 5th. So again, we will see next week, perhaps a little closer to how things are really looking now. Looking at the percent positivity over time, again, this graph compares the blue line is the total percent positivity in the state, whereas the light blue is just the higher education tests. We do a lot of testing in colleges and universities, and that pulls our state averages down a bit. So the orange line is sort of what our percent positivity would be without those higher education testing. Now, some college testing would happen regardless from people who may be symptomatic, but most of it is screening testing, so it can make our percent positivity look artificially lower. We could actually be in the mid 7%, which is much higher than we want to be. Frankly, 5 is much higher than we want to be. Now, looking at the testing in colleges right now, you can see with the dark blue being the rest of the state, the light blue being higher education testing. There was a significant drop-off in that during the Thanksgiving week, but now that has rebounded, not quite to its levels from earlier in the year. Many colleges did not come back after Thanksgiving, but the amount of positivity among colleges is still a much lower number than the rest of the state. And you can see how the state numbers have changed compared to the college numbers, which are more or less where they were before the Thanksgiving holiday. There was an increase of about 40,000 additional higher education tests since last week, and a spike of about 200 or so additional new cases. Of course, last week everything was lower because it was the Thanksgiving testing week. In terms of Massachusetts' own 7-day average, you can see here, looking from the beginning of November, how things had a gradual increase here, really only a slight decrease around Thanksgiving, and have significantly spiked since then. Now, it's possible that there was actually a bigger increase here than we're seeing from Thanksgiving, and that some of this is backlog. We'll maybe have a better idea of that next week. But this is still, a big jump from where we were at the beginning of November, where we were generally seeing on average just over 1,000 cases per day. And now we're in the range of getting near 5,000. And these are, again, on average. There are some days where we have crossed 5,000 new cases per day. One last thought going to the weekend, a little COVID Hanukkah cartoon there as the menorah candles try to maintain proper COVID precautions while still keeping the flame lit. So happy Hanukkah, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. See you on Tuesday. And for more of the MassSupport Network, you can find us on our website or on social media. And remember, wear your mask, wash your hands, and we'll be here if you need us. Stay safe.